Hey everybody, welcome back. Now I wanted to give you guys a quick update on the situation in Ukraine, what the sanctions on Russia's central bank will mean, why Bitcoin has exploded against expectations, and what I'm personally doing. Please give this video a thumbs up and let's dive in. Alright, so the plan was for the Russian military to quickly seize key airports, allowing Russian reinforcements to land by plane and quickly subdue the Ukrainian government in Kyiv. Now, Putin expected Ukrainians to largely surrender, which is pretty much what happened when he rolled in the tanks into Crimea and Georgia back in 2014 and 2008. But not this time. A week since the invasion began, Kyiv and Kharkiv, Ukraine's two largest cities, remain under Ukrainian control. As a result, military strategies have now evolved. So at Kyiv, the Russians are trying to flank the left side of the city to block it off and stop the reinforcements of Western supplies from Europe, such as the surface-to-air missiles that's causing Russian aircraft a lot of grief. Now, more generally, the Russians are trying to encircle major Ukrainian cities, while reinforcing their positions with massive convoys, shoring up logistics in preparation for a massive assault on the cities. Now, this will then kick off the next phase of the invasion, which is urban combat. Now, this has traditionally been the most brutal and bloodiest form of any military operation, right? The kind of urban battles that we're probably going to see will be at a scale probably not seen for 75 years, and it's likely going to be a humanitarian disaster. Overall, the general consensus is Mr. Putin has grossly underestimated the level of resistance there would be in Ukraine. Now, this explains why Russian troops have reportedly been suffering morale issues on the front line, right? Some of them apparently not fully trained and surrendering without a fight. Now, it's believed that Putin thought Kyiv would quickly fall and his 190,000 troops that he had assembled around the borders would come in mostly as peacekeepers rather than as active fighters, bogged down in a bloody Iraq-style insurgency across the countryside and now especially in the cities. So, with things not going too well, a few days ago the Russian president ordered his nuclear arsenal to be put on alert, which really was posturing to NATO not to get any more involved. Now, President Biden didn't take the bait because in the Cold War the US president would have reacted by putting American forces worldwide onto DEFCON 3. The UK Foreign Ministry also rejected Ukraine President Zelensky's request for a no-fly zone over Ukraine. Because that will put NATO forces in the unenviable position where they might have to engage the Russian Air Force over Ukrainian airspace, which would obviously be a very bad escalation. Now, as much as the West doesn't want a kinetic war with nuclear-armed Russia, they are now openly trying to topple the Russian financial system. You see, after Russia began its invasion, the West was kind of stumped on how to punish hard with sanctions without crippling themselves, right? Something which I talked about in my last update. So, what's the game plan? Well, firstly, the West decided to remove select banks from the SWIFT international banking system. Not all of them, just some of them. For instance, the sanctions exclude Russia's third largest bank, right, Gazprom Bank, which happens to be the most important payment conduit for Russian oil and gas. This is something which is going to keep the Europeans happy. And secondly, the West has decided to use what the Americans called the Iran model, right, by freezing $600 billion worth of foreign exchange reserves held by the Russian central bank. Now, this is a huge loot of cash. It was essentially a war chest built up by Putin since 2014 to try and sanction-proof the Russian economy in the future. And this assassination on the Russian central bank caught a lot of people by surprise. I imagine Putin will be pretty livid because he sacrificed economic development to stockpile these currency reserves. When you want a country to fail, right, you go after its central bank and cause a financial crisis. It's like an economic act of war. The Americans did it to the Iranians, but the Iranians didn't have the ability to threaten massive retaliation. That's the difference here with Russia. Anyway, last week the Bank of Russia began buying the ruble in an effort to arrest its plunge in value. Ordinary citizens have already began doing runs on banks, and there's only so much the central bank can defend the ruble when they've been denied access to all those foreign cash reserves. To try and stem the blood loss, the Russian central bank soared interest rates to 20% a few days ago. And look, I reckon the Kremlin might end up having to bail out some of its banks, and it's not going to be easy with the central bank crippled. So in short, the ingredients of a financial crisis: Right? You have bank runs, stock market crashes, interest rates that blow out as the value of bonds are collapsing, illiquidity-driven corporations failing. Right? All of these are in place right now. So it looks like the West has shown its hands. Right. Rather than cripple both the Russian and Western economies with a blanket ban on Russian banks from SWIFT, they've left the oil and gas into Europe intact. Right. Instead, they've decided to do a hit job on the Russian central bank, which is probably going to cause a lot of ordinary Russians quite a bit of pain. As a result of all of this chaos and financial instability, we've been seeing an influx of crypto volume for both Russian and Ukrainian exchanges. So Russians are buying up Bitcoin in droves to hedge against their plummeting ruble, while the Ukrainians are leveraging crypto donations to fund their resistance. The Bitcoin USD price exploded from 35 to 45k in 5 days. That's a 30% rally in less than a week, adding a whopping $200 billion to the Bitcoin market cap. Now, as I mentioned on Twitter, the Bitcoin's market cap recently flipped the Russian ruble. The volume has mostly been in Bitcoin, however, and right now we're seeing that long-awaited retest on the altcoin dominance chart. And hey, if Bitcoin can hold to 42k, that could set the stage for alts to have a nice rally coming up soon. Now, whether that's really going to happen, it's going to depend on the wider market sentiment, which does mean looking at what the US Fed is going to be up to. Now, the good news is the Fed chairman, Jerome Powell, has just indicated that he's willing to adapt the Fed's plans to reflect the worsening situation in Ukraine. The broad agenda, it's going to remain the same. So in order to combat inflation, the Fed will, well, number one, raise interest rates, and number two, wind down on the quantitative easing by tapering their bond purchases. Now, both of these are bad for investors and business because cheap rates mean it's cheap to borrow money and stimulus inflates asset prices. Right? I don't know about you, but I spent my checks on crypto. Ultimately, the Fed will still increase rates and they're still going to taper bond purchases, but Powell will probably ease up on the brakes if things get bad in order to keep the economy afloat, which will add a floor below asset prices. Right now, this includes property and the stock market, which is going to breathe a sigh of relief for investors. Now, of particular interest are the tech-heavy NASDAQ stocks, which we've seen correlate quite strongly with crypto lately. Now, this means if the US Fed will step in to protect their growth stocks, it's probably going to mean good news for the crypto space. All right, so what am I doing? Well, at the moment, the Bitcoin volume is being sustained by pretty much what's going on in Ukraine, which is a highly unpredictable environment. At the same time, the market fundamentals just don't look too great for me right now. So I wouldn't be too surprised if the market rally is only temporary. But look, I'm on the lookout for bargains on the long-term large caps. So Bitcoin, Ethereum, Polkadot, Chainlink, Cardano, and so forth. I've got a bunch of limit orders on exchanges in case Bitcoin returns back to that juicy 28 to 30k range, even 30 to 35, right? And anything I'm buying, I'm moving straight to places like Celsius, Nexo, Crypto.com, etc. to earn interest over the next few years. By the way, if you want to sign up to any of these platforms, I've got some links in the descriptions down below where you can get some free Bitcoin and crypto. Overall, I'm doing very little trading these days because the price action is based so much on the macro and geopolitical events, not financial advice, of course. Alright folks, please give this video a thumbs up if you found it useful. Let me know if you're enjoying these market updates. Take care and I'll see you in the next one.